Vrinda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham Kruti Vachanam Purnangati Girimit Kripatamaham Vande Shigruti Nataranam Paramanandam Madhavam Namo Vishwadaya Krishna Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pashachadeshitarine. Hare Krishna, thank you for joining. We'll resume our discussion from chapter 9, canto 6, appearance of Vritrasur. So we had done the first 8 verses, which is kind of setting the scene of the killing of Vritrasur by, or killing of Vishwarupa by Indra. Right. So in the previous chapter, we see that Vishwarupa, he had taught the Devas the art of chanting Narayan Kavach. He performed a yajna wherein he had actually chanted the Narayan Kavach. And protected by the Kavach, the Devas had attacked the Asuras, defeated them, and reclaimed their kingdom. Then Indra also finds that Vishwarupa, who had 3 heads, was with one of his heads, he was offering oblations to the demigods. With one of them, he was offering oblations to the Asuras. And the reason, of course, was that by his father's side, he was connected to the Devas from the side of Tvashta, and by his mother's side, he was connected to the Asuras. Right. So we will resume from 6.9.4. Taddev helanam tasya dharmalikam survishara alakasya tarasa bhitas tachshirsanya achinadrusha. Once upon a time, however, the king of heaven Indra understood that Vishwarupa was secretly cheating the demigods by offering oblations on behalf of the demons. He became extremely afraid of being defeated by the demons. And in great anger at Vishwarup, he cut Vishwarup's 3 heads from his shoulders. So interesting to see the flow of emotions in Indra. Now the first emotion that comes in him is fear. And from that fear comes anger. So in the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that unfulfilled lust becomes anger. And here we see that fear also manifests as anger. Now, Brahma had already informed Indra that there is a possibility that this will happen. Right? In the 7th chapter of this canto, he had said that you should accept Vishwarupa as a spiritual master. He will fulfill your desires. But then he said you have to tolerate his being inclined to the side with the demons. Right? Now, despite that, so it should not have come as a surprise to Indra. So it is generally said, well, there are different analogies that explain the categories of disciples. So, according to one acharya, there are 4 categories of disciples. The first is what is considered to be the banana tree. So it's almost impossible to set a banana tree to fire because it is so much filled with water. Similarly, a disciple that is filled with material desires, no matter what the guru will instruct, cannot take to the process. The second category of disciples are compared to coal. So they need a fire to become hot, and they also, while they are getting hot, they also give out a lot of smoke. So some of you may not have experienced, but when I was growing up, I had experience with cooking. It's called agiti. It's called like cooking on coal stoves, and there was a whole process to light it. That you put the coal, and then you would surround the coal with something else. It would either be like the dried husk of some plant, sometimes newspapers, and then you would first light them, and then the coal would light. And then when the coal would light, then initially it used to be very thick smoke. And then somebody would fan it, and then the coal would then catch fire, and then the smoke would disappear. It would be just a lot of, lot of heat. And it would also leave behind a strong black mark. Right? So, so these are. I mean, it would eventually catch. It would eventually catch fire, but it's like a disciple that eventually takes to spirituality, but after a lot of encouragement, after a lot of of uh, this smoke that completely overwhelms the senses. So one day the disciple will say, I will do it. The next day he'll say, I will not do it. The third day will say, why will I do it? But as the guru patiently works with them, the disciple eventually takes to the process. The third analogy is the camphor. Camphor is kapoor. So you bring it close to the flame, it quickly catches fire. Right? But it also, the camphor is also disfiguring. Like after the camphor burns, um, uh, if you have it on a plate, then you will notice that the plate will have a permanent disfigurement on it. Irrespective of how much you clean, it doesn't go there. So there is such a disciple that is rather quick to follow the guru's instruction, take to the process, but has resentment, not necessarily towards the guru, but towards the process. Why should I get up early and chant? Everybody else is sleeping. Why should I not be allowed to eat all this? Everybody's having fun. So they will still do it. Right? And essentially, that is sadhana Vaidhi bhakti. Sadhana Vaidhi bhakti is that you do something because you have been told to do it. And sadhana Raghunak bhakti is you do something because you want to do it. Right? So both of them are still under external instructions, but one is done under the force of the of the instruction, and the second is there is still the instruction that acts as the motivator, but there is the desire to follow the instruction. So the camphor is like a sadhaka in the Vaidhi stage that does follow the instruction of the guru, but still harbors resentment. And the fourth is the kind of a disciple is like a gasoline. So in a gasoline, even before the spark touches the gasoline, it catches fire. Actually, interestingly, this is a little bit of an aside that gasoline itself is not inflammable. You can take a matchstick, and if you are quick enough, you can actually put the matchstick in the gasoline, and the matchstick will, just like you put it in water, the matchstick will be extinguished. It's actually the fumes of the gasoline that catch fire, and then they start the process. And more gasoline evaporates, and then it quickly spreads there. So this is like a disciple that is very alert to even the smallest desire of the Guru. Right? There's a slight appearance of of the Guru's desire, and with great enthusiasm, the disciple acts upon it. Right? So, so four kinds of disciples and four kinds of gurus. So, what are the four kinds of gurus? So, there are gurus which are lenient with the self and lenient with the disciples. Then there are those that are lenient with the self but strict with the disciples. So themselves they will get up at 9 o'clock, but to the disciples they will say that Mangalarti, you should get up at Mangalarti. Then the third is those who are strict with the self but lenient with the disciple. Like Srila Prabhupada, right? He gave so many concessions to his disciples. Sometimes disciples become offensive to such gurus. Right? When they see the leniency of the guru, then they say, oh, this guru is no good and does not know what standards are. I'm such a big disciple, I'm such an advanced devotee. I need to be, I need to be to follow strict standards, but this guru is lenient. But then they don't understand the mood. Like Srila Prabhupada was criticized by his god brothers in India because he was in this category, that he was strict with himself. He followed Ekadashi strictly, chanted his rounds, focused on spirituality. Right, but disciples came. There's one letter that is there in Shikshamrita, which is from the temple president of the Paris temple, who was a sannyasi. And he writes in the letter that Prabhupada, I'm sorry. I know I'm a sannyasi. I have to be celibate. It's been difficult for me to follow the vows. And there is another devotee, a lady devotee in the temple, and I've been having a relationship with her, and she's now pregnant. So tell me what to do. Right? Now, you can imagine looking at it from Prabhupada's perspective, coming from a very strict Vaishnava family, disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But what does he write to the disciple? Um, it's unfortunate, but it's okay. What you should do is now marry that lady, enter into Grahastha ashram, and practice Krishna consciousness as a well-settled Grahastha couple. Right? So we see that mood of compassion. Now somebody else thinking will say, oh, such a person should be excommunicated, has no place in the temple, broke his vows, was a sannyasi, should drink hot ghee and die. Right? Uh, uh, but the mood of the people who criticize in this way is actually more like is considered to be even worse than the disciple who broke the vow. Because at least they're aware of their shortcomings. Such people who are criticizing a guru in this, they are blind. They're blind to their own shortcomings. So very difficult for them to make advancement. Then the fourth category of guru is one who is strict with the self and strict with the disciples. And you will see gurus make this distinction that with the more senior disciples, with the more committed disciples, they will be strict. And you have to do this, you have to make the right choices. And when the ones who are new, they're more lenient, but in all cases, they're strict with themselves. So Indra, in terms of the disciple, was in the first category, like a banana tree. And he was filled with the water of material desires. He had only approached Vishwarupa to get victory over the asuras. He had no interest in following Vishwarupa's instructions. He had no deference for Vishwarupa. He said whatever was needed to achieve the end, that, oh, we consider you to be high, to be elevated and superior. So all that he said was just to achieve his end. And his end was material, that he wanted himself and the devas to be restored to their opulence in the Swargaloka. Vishwarupa was in the third category. Right? He knew the motivation of Indra. He knew that they approached him with material desires. But as an exalted Brahman, he was very magnanimous. Right? So that was his austerity. So what does austerity mean? It means that to do something that we do not like for a higher purpose. Right? So Vishwarupa, he undertook this austerity. He recognized the fact that his disciples were cheating him. Nobody likes to do that, but the higher purpose was that they have come to me looking for shelter. As a Brahman, it is my duty to give them shelter. What would have been the austerity from the Deva's side? That even though Vishwarupa was inferior to them in age and position, and even though he had inclination toward the Asuras, they should not have allowed that to disturb their mood of surrender. Now, the Devas did perform some austerity. So, what was the austerity from the Devas' part? Is to stand before Vishwarupa with folded hands. Because for them, it was demeaning. So, Vishwarupa recognized their austerity and rewarded them. But their austerity of the Devas was very much limited. So, here we see the situation of a well-situated guru giving shelter to a disciple who is not properly situated. Right? So the question here is that how can we say Vishwarupa is well situated if he was secretly offering oblations to the asuras? And that will get addressed later on. But what is clear is that the Devas did not have faith in the Guru. They did not trust Vishwarup. Otherwise, Indra had no business spying on his Guru. How did Indra come to know that Vishwarup was offering oblations to the Asuras? Because he was spying on Vishwarup. That's not the mood of a disciple. For instance, in the fourth canto, when Lord Vishnu comes in front of Prithu Maharaj and he says that I'm ready to give you anything you want. What does Prithu Maharaj say? That whatever you decide, you should give it to me. That is, I know that will be for my highest benefit, right? That's the nature of a sincere disciple. But the Devas lacked this trust. They were spying on their guru. They were seeing things in a relative fashion, right? So when Vishwarupa, they found Vishwarupa was offering to the Asuras, they immediately assumed that Vishwarupa was cheating on them. Factually speaking, it reflects the equanimity, the samadrishti of a liberated Brahman. So sometimes siblings have competition, and then they say that my parents should favor me and not the other child. Right? But the parents, they look at the siblings as the same, even though the siblings might hate one another. But for the parent, they are the same. So Vishwarupa was a liberated Brahmin. He did not make distinction between the asuras and the suras. He was not offering oblation to the asuras because they were his relative. Even though that is given as a reason by Brahma, but given the position of Vishwarupa, one can understand that simply out of his magnanimity, just like he was benefiting the suras, he was benefiting the asuras. So we see that in this pastime of Vritasur, the result of offenses. It began with Indra offending Brahaspati. Now he quickly repented, but but it was superficial. It was theoretical. It wasn't realized. Right? When is realization possible? Only when humility is there. Right? We see that again in the third canto. Uh, Lord Kapila talks about bhakti in the mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Right. So bhakti is possible to be executed in the mode of of ignorance, which means with pride, with arrogance. But only when bhakti is performed with humility does it reveal its full potency. Right. So only when the disciples they execute the service in humility, and this is the secret of devotional service, right? That two people may doing the same devotional service. One may be getting a lot of realizations, one may not be getting any realizations. What is the difference? Humility. Like when two people are standing on the altar and they're offering arti to the deities. Right? One person is thinking that these people standing in the temple are probably looking at how well I'm offering the paraphernalia, how nicely I'm making this circumambulations with the paraphernalia, the ringing of the bell, and the uh, blowing of the conch. The other person standing next to him is thinking, thank you so much to my Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, so that I can, on their behalf, offer some service. Right? Same altar next to one another, same service, one person gets an ocean of realizations and the other person does not. Right. So that was the reason why Indra did not make any progress, because of his repentance at the insulting of Brahaspati. So it's not that the devas. So the devas have the service of protecting the universe, right? It's their service. It's right for them to be attached. But what is not right is when they get attached to the fame, fortune, and wealth that comes with the service. That is what drives the realizations away from a devotee. Right? So in Ramayana, when Vibhishan came to surrender, Sugriv, Hanuman said, fine, go ahead. Enthusiastically he accepted. So Lord Ram had this mood that he would always consult. Now, of course, he was the final decision maker, but he was still concerned. So he said, what should I do? And Hanuman said, accept him. And Sugriv said, I don't think so. And Lord Ram said, why? He said that we do not know why he is coming. He may be an agent of Ravan, and then he can cause disturbances. So what does Lord Ram says? He says, oh Sugriv, with my little finger, I can trample this entire world. What to speak of Vibhishan? Right? So meaning, so what was Lord Ram saying? That even if Vibhishan betrayed him, the triumph of Lord Ram would still happen. He is not dependent on Vibhishan, he is not dependent on Sugriv or Hanuman or anyone else, right? So what does it mean? That the compassion, so Lord Ram accepts Vibhishan, that the compassion of Vibhishan is also based on the practical aspect of his prowess. So what we see in this Lord Ram's pastime is practicality in his compassion. Right? So what was the practical aspect? That let Vibhishan betray me, doesn't make a difference. But let me be compassionate to him. In Krishna's case, we see compassion in his practicality. Right? So uh, uh, during the Mahabharata war, or just before it, Krishna found out that Karna had taken this vow that he would not enter the battlefield until Bhishma was there, because Karna was very envious of Bhishma. He said, I'll fight and Bhishma will take the credit. So he says, until Bhishma is there in the battlefield, I will not enter the battlefield. So what does Krishna do? He goes to Karna and he says, you're a powerful Kshatriya warrior. Warriors live for these kinds of days. This battle will go down history, and for millennia people will talk about the glories of the warriors in this battle. Right? So, and who knows? Bhishma has got Ichamriti. Who knows he may die or not? So, why don't you fight with the Pandavas while Bhishma is alive? That way you can display your chivalry, your valor. And when Bhishma dies, then you go and fight from their side. But your glory as a warrior will be preserved. Now, Karna did not agree to do that. But here what Krishna is showing is, so the practical aspect of it was that he wanted the Pandavas to become stronger. So he was trying to get Karna over to the sides of the Pandavas. But the compassion of it was that let Karna get some pious benefits by following my instructions. Let Karna make advancement by fighting on the side of dharma. So in the case of Vishwarupa, we see that we see a mixture of this. Right? He did the practical thing, but it was based on compassion. That these devas are scared. They have lost their assigned position. So practically, let me help them. But the compassion was that let them take shelter of a bona fide guru and let them make advancement. But then what do we see over here? That this compassion will be abused by Indra and the devas. So compassion is a two-ended sword or a double-ended sword. When we extend compassion to others, then they can use it to cut us also. Right? Which is why one has to be careful that one is qualified to give compassion and one is, more importantly, qualified to handle the consequences of compassion. Amongst devotees, you sometimes see, quite often see, devotees come new and somebody takes them under the wing, Pad Prataksha Guru, and after some time the devotees become more well settled. They get integrated with the temple or with other devotees, and then they reject the original person, right? Then they start thinking that I have other places for sustenance, or I have person who are more advanced, and then the devotee becomes bitter, saying that I preached to him, I extended myself. So there are consequences of extending compassion, which should be carefully thought about over here. That was, if anything, that was Vishwarupa's fault, that he did not think completely about the consequences of the compassion that he was extending. Right. So this pastime, it has a lot of a lot of practical lessons in devotional service. Okay, so I spent a lot of time on this verse, but I found this to be very illustrative. Verse 5. सोमपितं तु यत्तस्या क्षीर आसीत् कपिञ्जलः कविनिकः सुरापीठम् अनादं यत् स तित्रितिः. Thereafter, the head meant for drinking somaras was transformed into a kapinjal, Franklin partridge. Similarly, the head meant for drinking wine was transformed into a kalavinka, sparrow, and the head meant for eating food became a titiri, common partridge. So the three heads became a sparrow, a Franklin partridge, and a common partridge. Titiri actually is kind of interesting that there is an Upanishad called the Taittiriya Upanishad, which derives its name from this Titiri. Verse 6. Brahmatyam Anjalina Jagrahayad Apishwaraha Samvatsaranti Taddagam Bhutanam Savishuddhaye Bhumyam Mudruma Yashit Behas Chaturta Vyabhajadharihi. Although Indra was so powerful that he could neutralize the sinful reactions for killing a Brahman, he repentantly accepted the burden of these reactions with folded hands. He suffered for 1 year, and then to purify himself, he distributed the reactions for his sinful killing among the earth, water, trees, and women. So, after killing a Brahman and his guru, Indra began to repent. That I'm such an abominable person, I've committed such a great sin out of anger and fear. Right? So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Indra says that I should take the results right now. Let me burn by the powers of my offense. Right? So we see here the conflicting nature of Indra. That he offended Brahaspati and then he immediately repented. He killed Vishwarupa and then he repented. Right? Now, his repentance is not deep. It is not fully genuine, but nevertheless it is there. This is because Indra is also a devotee who has been appointed by the Lord to this very important position. Right? So he acquired this position because of leading many lives of piety. So by nature Indra is pious. So immediately he can see the reactions to his misdeeds. So it is said that Indra could have neutralized these reactions by his own piety, but yet he accepted these reactions for a year. Now, after a year, the reactions were still there. The intensity was reduced, but the reaction was still there. Right? So, so Vishwanath Chakravarti says that Indra, understanding that his body is made of earth, water, fire, and air, and was contaminated by these reactions, he took them from his body and gave them to the corresponding sources. So that is why he divided the sin into 4 parts. And Chakravarti says that ether cannot become impure. It doesn't say why, but he says that as a statement that since ether cannot become impure, he purified the 4 elements and thus divided the sin into 4 parts. Right? But the important thing to understand here again is that Indra is doing this superficially. He's taking the sins in his gross body, he reduced it by suffering the reaction for 1 year, and then whatever is remaining, he is transferring it to the corresponding elements. But the sin in his antakarna, so in his chitta, in his subtle body, mind, intelligence, false ego, that remained. And that seed fructifies again when he kills Vritrasur. Right? So the same cycle happens again, that Indra repents externally, but without complete realization. So it remains in the subtle form and fructifies again. And then he repents externally and the sin remains again. So in this Vritrasur pastime, you will see that Indra offends or kills 4 Brahmanas. So he offends Brahaspati, he kills Vishwarupa, he causes the death of um, what was the name of the rishi whose bones he took to create the Vajra?
Dadichi.
Dadichi, right? So he causes the death of Dadichi and then he kills Vritrasur. Right? All 4 Brahmins. And he goes into the cycle of offending, repenting, but not fully repenting. Offending, repenting, offending, repenting. Right? So, so it is said that for practicing devotees, there are 3 reasons for being distracted from the path of bhakti. Right? So the when the guru gives the bhakti lata beach, first reason is that the disciple does not accept the beach, which is equivalent to the disciple not accepting the instructions of the guru. Right? The beach is not something mystical, it's there in the instructions of the guru. When the disciple rejects the instructions, they reject the bhakti lata beach. The second is they accept the seed, but they do not water the seeds, which means that they accept the instructions, but they either do not execute on it or they execute on it improperly. Right? Guru says chant 16 rounds, the disciple says, well, he says 16 rounds, but of course he means that up to 16 rounds. Someday I'll chant 3 rounds, someday I'll chant 4 rounds. And we have all had this experience. So you tell somebody, Lanyu, that Prabhu chant 5 rounds. And the person will say, yes, I'll chant 5 rounds. You meet with the person again. Are you chanting 5 rounds? Yes, I'm chanting 5 rounds. Are you chanting regularly? No, not regularly. Whenever I can, I chant 5 rounds. I make sure that whenever I can, I chant 5 rounds. So they take the instructions, but they execute it according to their convenience, right? So that is like not watering the seeds. The third is they accept the seed, they water it, but they also water the weeds, which means that they continue to nourish the material attachments. Indra is in the third category, right? That he took the instructions from Lord Brahma. He took the instructions from Vishwarupa. Later on, he'll take the instructions from Krishna. Right? And with that, he waters his bhakti. but he is also actively watering his material desires, which essentially then choke out the the bhakti. Right. So if you compare, um, so in the Bhagavatam we have different personalities doing mistakes, right? So uh, let's look at Parikshit Maharaj. He offended a Brahman, and Indra offended a Brahman or several Brahmins. But we see that in the case of Parikshit Maharaj, when he was told, or even before he was told, when he became aware that he had offended a Brahman, right? Then he asked for three things. He said that let the reaction come without delays immediately. Let it come in full force. Right? Don't. I should not plan to divide the reaction and take some of it on me. See what happens after that. No, he says, come immediately, come in full force. And the third thing he says is, let it not impact my family members. So that is the difference between a pure devotee and a karma mishra bhakta. So Indra, he had no, he was scared of the reactions. He wasn't praying for the reactions to come. And he was hoping to reduce the force of the reaction. And then finally, what does he do? He divides the reaction. And he says, why should I suffer alone? Let the earth, let the rivers, let the women suffer along with me. That's the difference between the mode of a karma mishra bhakta and a shuddha bhakta. Now, if we compare Indra to Dhruva Maharaj, so Dhruva Maharaj, he went to Narad Muni asking for material benefit. Narad Muni gave him the mantra. He followed the process of the Guru. Lord Vishnu came, and Lord Vishnu said that for 36,000 years you will rule. He also said you will come back to Godhead. But when Lord Vishnu went, Dhruva's main mood was that of lamentation. That so even though he did not ask Lord Vishnu for any material things, he said the reason that I was given that was because the Lord could see the contamination in me. That he could have given me diamond, which is bhakti, but he gave me iron, which is material benediction. So Prabhupada writes in the purport that Dhruva was initiated by Narad Muni into Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Similarly, Indra was initiated by Vishwarup into the Narayan Kavach. However, Dhruva became completely purified of material desires by chanting of the mantra because of his faith in his Guru. In case of Indra, since he maintained material attraction, he did not get access to the full potency of the Narayan Kavach. Right? So the two things need to go hand in hand. Like the analogy is like if you get an itch on the skin and the doctor says that take this ointment and apply on it. He'll also say that you may feel itchy, but don't itch it. So while the ointment is working, you have to not itch it. So similarly, when we take to bhakti, which is like the ointment, we have also to resist the desire to itch, which is indulging in material attachment. Indra is seen as doing both. He's taking the ointment, he is respectful, he has repentance, he surrenders to Brahma, he he surrenders to Vishwaru. So he's taking the ointment, but he's also itching. He's also constantly worried about his material possession. As soon as he thinks that Vishwarup is going to impact his material position, he kills him. Right? The ointment is there, but the itch is also there. Okay, let's move to the next verse. Verse 7. Bhume turyam jagraha khat purvareణ vai irnam brahma hatyaya rupam bhumao pradarsyate. In return for Indra's benediction, that ditches in the earth would be filled automatically. The land accepted 1/4 of the sinful reactions for killing a Brahman. Because of the sinful reactions, we may find many deserts on the surface of the earth. So in the next few verses, we see the result of the benedictions by Indra and the results of the acceptance of the sinful reactions. Right. So Indra's benediction was that if there are ditches on the earth, they will become filled by water on their own. Right? So that was his benediction. And the result of accepting 1/4 of Indra's sin is that there are surfaces on the earth that is barren. These are deserts. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that is why it is forbidden to study the Vedas at such places since sins reside here, essentially an barren land. Prabhupada says that because deserts are manifestation of the earth's diseased condition, no auspicious ritualistic ceremony can be performed in a desert. Persons destined to living in deserts are understood to be sharing the reactions of the sins of Brahmahatya, the killing of a Brahman. And Prabhupada is making an oblique references to the what are they called, Yapnas or whatever, the people like the Middle East part who live in deserts. Okay, verse 8. Turyam ched virohena varena jagruhurdrumma tesham niryas rupena brahmatya pradarshayate. In return for Indra's benediction, that the branches and twigs would grow back when trimmed, the trees accepted 1/4 of the reactions for killing a Brahman. These reactions are visible in the form of in the flowings of sap from trees. Therefore, one is forbidden to drink this sap. And so the benediction is in the trees that if the branches are broken or the twigs are broken, they will grow back. And the result of the sin is that they will have visible sap. And when I was reading this, I was thinking about maple syrup actually, because maple syrup is actually nothing but the sap of the trees. But as far as I know, it is not forbidden to use maple syrup, but I may be wrong. But according to the scriptures, the flowing sap of a tree is considered to be contaminated. Verse 9. Shashvat kama varenam sturyam jagruhustriya rajarupena tasvammo masyamasi pradarshayate. In return for Lord Indra's benediction, that they would be able to enjoy lusty desires continuously, even during pregnancy, for as long as sex is not injurious to the embryo. Women accepted 1/4 of the sinful reactions. As a result of these reactions, women manifest the signs of menstruation every month. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes here that the word continuous desire, so it is said Shashvat Kama in the relationship with women. So Shashvat Kama means that even after enjoying much sexual enjoyment, a woman desires even more. And even when the woman is with child, she continues to desire sexual enjoyment, which is something that is actually unique to the human species. It's not exclusive to the human species, but very few species have. In almost all other species, as the sex is essentially just a way of procreation. So as soon as the female is impregnated, um, they lose all desire to have sex. In some cases, they physically cannot have sex. In some cases, they lose desire. But human species and some other few species, they still manifest this, which is a benediction by Indra. And the sins that they accepted was the menstrual period that happens on a monthly cycle. During this time, because it is the result of accepting sin, the woman is considered to be contaminated and does not perform religious activities. However, since chanting is a spiritual activity that purifies and cannot be contaminated, there is no restriction to chanting japa during this time, especially the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. I believe there was some discussion about the Gayatri mantra, but at the end of the day, Srila Prabhupada said that it's part of the Vaishnava process. Okay, we have about 5 minutes left, and I think the next section is essentially, well, let me do one more verse and then we'll stop. That will end this section. Verse 10. Dravya varena pastruyam jagrurmalam ashu buddha bhyam drashtam tadharti kshipan. And in return for Indra's benediction that water would increase the volume of other substances with which it was mixed, water accepted 1/4 of the sinful reactions. Therefore, there are bubbles and foam in water. When one collects water, these should be avoided. Right? So the benediction is that uh, uh, adding water will increase the volume. Vishwanath Chakravarti said it could also mean that when you add water to anything else, water forces that thing to take its nature, which means that becomes like water. So if you add water to salt, the salt disappears and you get water. Or as Srila Prabhupada also says, if you add water, then it increases the volume. And the sinful reaction is that, and you can see that on the beaches especially, you'll see that there is a long line of foam and bubbles, and they actually look very gross and dirty. So generally, they're avoided when collecting drinking water, when offering Achman water, etc. You wait for the foams and the bubbles to dissipate. So one thing we see that in this material world, nothing is free. Right? Indra gave them benediction, but also he forced them to accept a portion of his sinful reactions. Right? So this is the general rule in the material world. So one must be very careful in accepting favors. So even though, like in Indra's case, he explicitly gave sinful reactions, but just by the law of karma, when you accept favors, you also accept a portion of the sinful reaction. And then there is the other aspect also, that when you are obligated to a person, then the person may try to control you. So just to summarize, the 4 elements: earth, the benediction is that the ditches would fill automatically with water. The sinful reaction is the deserts. Tree, and tree represents the element air. Their branches and twigs will grow back when trimmed, and the sinful reaction is the sap. And the women represent fire, the lust part of it. that they would be able to enjoy lusty desires, but they would show signs of menstruation. And the fourth is water, would increase the volume. And the sinful reaction is that there are bubbles and foam in the water. So I'll stop over here. After this, the next section is going to be the birth of Vritrasur. And let's see if we have any, we have a few minutes left. See if you have any discussions.
Prabhuji, one comment and question, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Please go ahead, Prabhu.
Yeah, sure, Prabhuji. One point that you are mentioning about the compassion being the double-edged sword, and you gave the example of Lord Ram, how he is compassionate, and so like you rightly said, like, for Ram, he can be compassionate because uh, he has that adhikar, because he can capable of facing the consequences. But whereas people like us, we need to see our adhikar, whom we are doing, and apply our compassion carefully. Otherwise, at least stay a little distance and avoid certain association rather than being compassionate. Uh, so that was my understanding from that, because that was Ram's example actually clarified. And one question, Prabhuji, like, is Indra really has a spiritual master? Because it seems like, you know, uh, even from Brahaspati, he always used it like a guru, but who is helping him and guiding him in his material activities rather than how to approach Krishna. Uh, and whereas with Vishwarup, his approach itself is very clear that he wants material benefits. So, uh, and if the Vishwarup is giving the oblations to the Asuras, obviously they will also become powerful. Then what advantage he gains? So, uh, because he's thinking like materialist, what wrong he actually did? His purpose is not survived, so that's why he is spying. And what other option he would have taken to prevent him, uh, you know, uh, giving oblations? Because once Vishwarup, he accepted him as guru, even as a material guru, he can't dictate terms. Of course, he can do anything better than killing, but still, I want to hear from you. Is what is the conception of a spiritual master for him, and uh, also what he does is how much right and how much wrong.
So thank you, Prabhu. Good questions. Indra comes in the category of Mishra Bhakta. Right? So Mishra Bhakta, you will see this Mishra. Right? You'll see the Indra has a lot of faith in Krishna and Vishnu. You see his mood of surrender, following their instructions. But like we are just seeing, that he also has strong material desires, and they're always disturbing him. Whether it is killing of Vishwaroop, whether it is stealing the cow, whether it is enjoying with Ahilya. So there is this confluence of material and spiritual. Nevertheless, he's a dear devotee of Krishna, because Indra is one of the few personalities that actually goes back to Godhead at the end of his life. Right. So it is said that the 33 major demigods, all of them go back to Godhead, right? Headed by Indra. So at some point he becomes a pure devotee, or is always a pure devotee, who is in the process of being purified there. But yes, your observations are absolutely right, that when he comes under the force of material desires, he acts like a materialist, including using his guru for material purposes. Right? But then we also see this mood of surrender to guru, wanting to take shelter of a guru, follow the instructions of a guru, turning to Krishna in times of necessity, right? So that also is prominent in Indra.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Okay, any other thoughts?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I just wanted to add that even hing is a sap, you know.
Even hing is a what?
It's a sap from a
It's
tree.
a sap. No, it's not a
Yes.
sap. It's a rock.
No, when you Google it, you will see it's a sap which comes from a plant and it solidifies. This is I think.
I didn't know.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm not too sure. I mean, the reason I was thinking about maple syrup because I do take maple syrup in my.
Yeah, not only, even me, I was thinking of maple syrup when you said. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, the name of Govinda was given by Indra, correct?
It was given by Indra. Yeah.
I mean, one of the name that everybody like chant is Govinda.
Yeah.
And it's given by Indra.
Yeah. So Krishna is definitely fond of him.
Prabhu, do you think it's a Leela that he's playing, because there must be a villain in the role so that all these things come up? Maybe it's a Leela together. Krishna is planning something, using him, just like Jay and Vijay, same thing.
Yeah. And even I heard, Prabhuji, all the Pandavas also at some or other point performed the role of Indra in different times. I heard like that.
Yes. It's there in Mahabharata.
Prabhuji.
Okay, so we'll stop over here. वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितनां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय, शिला रूपादि की जय, थाई गौर प्रेमानंदे। हरे कृष्ण। Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji.